Tally Cat Tap Talks, and I have Frank Robles here. He is Netcom and ISP beginning in the mid 1990s. Frank Robles was one of the founding employees at Netcom. He's also got a world of knowledge, and that's why I have him on this show so he can talk to us. So tell us your story, Frank.
Oh my gosh. Where do you, I mean, this is just too much. I mean, where do you want me to begin?
Okay. How about this one? What was the moment in your early career that made you realize you were meant to build companies instead of just working for one?
It was sort of unintentional. I was studying computer science at the University of California in Santa Cruz. And there was a professor who wanted to start a startup company. And I was new to that whole idea. I was just programming and learning how to, improving my programming skills. I was also managing the computer lab. And everyone was recommending me. Everyone around me was pointing at me, telling him he should be grabbing me. And he convinced me to join him on that journey. That company was called Techless Software. And I was the lead developer, and I was helping him raise money. So that was my first exposure to raising money, but I was also writing the code. And then over time, I became the leader of that company, and I was the person actually delivering, producing product, shipping our first product, making things happen. So that's when, I came to the realization a little bit of what really happens behind the scenes in raising money in companies, and also what it took to actually produce a product and get it out the door.
Wow. So, what do you know about Yahoo? You're
Quite a
kind of
bit.
like,
Quite a,
yeah, so you're
quite a
kind of like the legend of, did you help start Yahoo or did you help
Yipes.
formulate
You mean
Yahoo?
yipes. You mean yipes.
Yeah, yipes.
Yeah. Oh my. Yeah. Well, we had Peter Kaminsky and I left Netcom. He was a guy who came up with the idea of NetCruiser, the first integrated browser, and so it had everything was inside NetCruiser, and that really drove the success of Netcom. And we left together, and we started a company called Nanospace. And we came up with that name. It was interesting. We were at a pizza place near where we were establishing our office, and kind of trying to come up with a name, and we had just gone to one of the first internet conventions, and everyone was talking about cyber this, cyber that. They're calling the internet cyberspace, and there wasn't anything cybernetic about the internet really. And so we knew nanotechnology was coming, so we called our thing Nanospace. And we started building a regional telecommunications company. And as we grew that, this idea came to me about doing metro fiber. The city of Palo Alto was installing fiber optic cables and with the intention of leasing those out. So I negotiated with them. It took like a year to get our hands on our own fiber. And we started connecting businesses with fiber optics and Ethernet. And that had never been done before. In fact, many people said it was impossible. So that was the formation of what became Yipes. We renamed the company later to Yipes. I was able to raise about initially $13.6 million. We brought in a bunch of brand name people. And as we started raising more money, they wanted to change the name to Yipes. They felt it was more exciting than Nanospace.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is like, it's
yeah, no,
mind-boggling.
yeah.
It is mind-boggling.
A lot of things got established during that time. I mean, that was a big success, but that's also a big failure in many ways because um, I had established Metro Ethernet, and we even sponsored the first Metro Ethernet forum. So it was like a discussion group and policy organization that set standards for Metro Ethernet. And a lot of people were jumping on that bandwagon because it was much more efficient and much more cost effective to deliver really high quality, large volume internet telecommunications. And it was also allowing us to circumvent the telephone company. Because in the past at Netcom, I discovered that they were an unwilling partner. Half the money we made at Netcom, we gave back to the telephone company for leasing their services, and they were fighting us the entire way. It just didn't make any sense. So doing it with our own fiber allowed us to circumvent them. And that company was becoming very successful. In their end, I raised a total of $290+ million, and we were rolling out fiber optics all across the country. and we were about to go public. So we were going to go public at just 3.5 billion, and then the new CEO decided to pull the IPO and put that on hold. And I think they thought the venture capital was just going to continue to flow as easily as it had flown, and it didn't. And so in the end, the company was sold for $300 million.
Wow. That's a lot of technology, because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be doing the things we're doing right now.
Yeah, no, the Metro Ethernet was a big thing, and now it's a standard across the world. I mean, and I helped, like, I was the biggest purchaser of that type of equipment, so I was defining the requirements for the equipment. So a lot of that early equipment, has my fingerprints on it because I was working with the companies to produce it. And the same is interesting is the companies primarily were Extreme and Juniper. And though the guys who were chairman of their boards were also on my board of directors, and they were our major investors. So it was a really tight relationship.
So at what point did you know that this was something that you was going to do? Or is this how you formulated your consultant business?
No, the consulting came way later, many years later, because I did that company and I did a couple other companies, and um, I ended up in Texas building a data center company, and um, that didn't work out for a lot of reasons. I had to sell that company, but and I went through a divorce, and so rather than trying to build more companies, because I had to sell off my companies at that point, I started just consulting, just renting my brain out to people, helping larger companies. So that's how I ended up in the consulting track.
So you said you should have a shirt, renting my brain out.
Yeah, yeah. It's been an adventure. I mean, I've helped a lot of big companies, and I helped create even more companies. Um, and then I've also invested in some companies along the way. But now I'm still doing the consulting stuff, and I want to do more consulting stuff, but I want to do more of this podcasting thing, helping get some of these ideas out there and help more people. I've did a little bit of that, and I've got a lot of positive feedback. And then I'm also starting to build another software company, and I kind of want to do more of that rather than just rent myself out. I want to build some things that are lasting, because I'm kind of back in that same framework where, just helping other people, that's good, but sometimes people have to make their own mistakes sometime, and I can help lift a company up really fast because I've got a lot of knowledge and experience, and I've spent hundreds of millions of dollars, in these various areas. So rather than someone have to like experiment and fail or not know what it is, I know what those things are, and I know what the right choices are to be made. So I can lift a company up really fast. But at the same time, I'm not the leader. I'm a person help pushing and might be a peer, but it's not my company. So, I want to also build some of my own companies that I don't have to worry about that stuff.
Yeah, it's not your company, but you have the experience to help push them off the ground and like basically up to a higher level.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there right now, starting at ground level, failing, but not understanding, there's a process.
Yeah.
And
I was actually talking with a gentleman who worked for me many years ago, and he went on to Disney, and he's got an idea, and I was helping him think through his idea, and he's been working this idea for a while, and then I had him think about it a little bit differently. I'll even highlight it here. So his idea is um, a sort of self-funded insurance company for, just like you talked about people getting laid off, in our previous conversation. So this would help cover people in case they got laid off or they had to change their jobs. And it's similar to a program that exists in Europe. And a couple of countries in Europe have this, where you have job security, and if your job changes, this insurance company will step in and still cover your bills and stuff like that. So he was trying to get traction with insurance companies, and from my perspective, and he hasn't. He's been trying for years and hasn't gotten traction. And he's confident that he can get some really large customers from some of the larger unions. So my perspective is, let's talk to them first. Go get your customers first, and then turn around and talk to the insurance agencies. Because then if you're walking in with a few 100,000 customers, you're going to have their attention instead of walking in with an idea.
Oh, why don't he just build his own insurance company
Well,
instead of going
let's
to
get the
it?
customers first. I mean, if he gets the customers first, then maybe financing will arrive and other things will show up. But just
Yeah,
sometimes someone just needs to think about it from a different angle. Is the point I'm trying to make?
yeah, and I fully understand. And so you have a lot of ideas. You're into your software, your security, and then you have like your own little coffee
Yeah,
adventure.
yeah.
Explain that coffee adventure.
Well, I'm very proud of that. It's 1918 coffee company, and for many years I wanted to create a coffee company, and I had met with some roasting companies. I've gone, figured out the whole process, and in terms of import, export, and beans and storage and roasting, and so it's been a few years in the making. And I finally was able to work out agreements with two roasting companies, and we made our own label. And it's 1918 because that's when my grandfather was born. So it's in memory of my grandfather. My sister and I were pretty much raised by our grandparents for a long time. And he was a World War II vet, and he had a Victory lunchbox. So my grandmother and I would roast coffee for him, or sorry, brew coffee for him in the morning before he would go to work at the mill. He worked at a paper mill. So we would get his thermos and fill it with coffee and have his little Victory lunchbox and put a bologna sandwich in there. I was the coffee was always it was a pretty big experience. As a kid, you're being part of that. But also, I was always pretty amazed that he went all day with just this thermos and one or two bologna sandwiches, and he's working really hard physical work at this mill. So it's in remembrance of those times and him, and the coffee is really meant for like real working people who really really need to show up and do their job. And so it's really high quality coffee, and I brought the price down as low as I could. And the trick, what we do with it is roast it fresh. So when someone places an order online, they get fresh. It doesn't get shipped till it's roasted. So it gets shipped the same day it's roasted. And I mean, it makes all the difference. It makes all the difference. Um, I don't really like super burnt coffee. I like medium roast coffee. And my theory, and a lot of this stuff, where they really, really burn it, is just to cover up all of these flavors or mistakes or what have you, and reduce it all down to the minimum. But with a medium roast that's been freshly roasted, you get all these different flavors and tastes, and you can really appreciate what's happening with the coffee and then the different beans. We even went to Bali and went to the coffee plantation and went through the whole process and sampled all their coffees and their beans. It was just amazing. So I've always wanted to make this coffee company. I made the coffee company, and the technology part for me was it's all automated in terms of the transactions. Someone comes in with a transaction, that's automated. It goes to the roasting companies. They get the order, they roast it, they ship it, they put our label on it. Everything is set up so it doesn't have to be touched by me. I don't need people who are handling orders every day. It's all really nice.
That's nice. Can you share a moment when you thought about giving up on any of your adventures because you have so many? And just
Um,
walk us through that moment. You actually thought that you were going to give up, and how did you overcome it?
well, it's not a lot of give up in me. First of all, there's not a lot of give up, but there's I mean, I had to sell some companies in the past, and I just cut losses and sold what I could. Um, I think I mentioned one company. Let me look at my notes. There's 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 been a couple times where you feel like giving up about something, and So sometimes you should, sometimes you need to listen to that, but you need to like take care of those around you. What's important to me is to take care of the vendors and the employees and what have you. Like one time I needed to sell a company, and one of the leaders of the company was really interested in acquiring it, so I sold it to him, and I helped all the employees get jobs. That was really important to me, and so they either kept their job or they got new jobs to try to make a soft landing for everybody. So the person who took the hit, of course, is me, but tried to make it a soft landing for everybody. But sometimes you need to pivot. Sometimes you need to you're pushing. Someone said before, you're pushing a noodle uphill, right? That's not going to go. It's just going to bend around. And so sometimes you need to realize that. And earlier in my career, I didn't give up. I just kept on going, and that was a mistake. Sometimes you need to realize, that you're pushing a noodle up a hill. One time I've got a good example. This was a company called Neapolitan Networks, and I had an offer to acquire the company. And in hindsight, it was a mistake not to take that offer. On paper, the company was worth, a good amount of money. The offer I was getting was less than that, but not too much less. And so I would have made money. The investors would have made money, but the employees, weren't going to make anything. They were just going to keep their jobs. And the market had turned in a different direction than I was expecting, a few years later, and it would have been way better to have sold that company for everybody involved. And so sometimes, you hold on too long.
So, with that said, holding on too long, how do you know to let go, though? How do you know?
It's really tough. You need to examine that sometimes. The thing that the measure that I usually internally use is progression. Like, are we going in the right direction? Maybe not all the cylinders in the engine are firing off, but we're going in the right direction. Things may not be as smoothly as they should, but we're going in the right direction. So that's the sort of rule of thumb that I use. But you also need to look at metrics. Like, what am I spending on marketing? What am I spending on sales? Is this thing really progressing at a decent pace? And if it's not, that's when you really need to consider, what are you doing? You need to diversify. You need to do something else. You need to, this one didn't really work out so well. You need to sell it or shut it down. But that's when you need to do that examination. And you should look at your comparables. Like, typically companies might lose money for a couple of years. But if you're year 3 and 4 and you're not really making money, then something's not right. Another issue is something may not be right with you. Maybe you're not giving clarity and direction. And I've seen that a lot, where a company is trying to do too many things, and it's like, which thing do you need to do? I call it cutting away everything's not a duck. You need to examine what you want to try, and I've got this whole duck story, but you got to cut away everything that's not a duck. And sometimes that's effective. I have had a friend who did that with one of his investments, where the company did many things, and then he was investing in this company, and he examined, and they did a tour of the company. They showed him what they did, and this company was a ISP, but they also did web pages. They also did some programming. They had these computers they're renting out, and they had these racks in the computers. And so for the presentation, someone had organized those very well. They'd wrapped the cables very well. And so when my friend went there, he says, you know what? You guys just need to do this. You stop doing everything else. We're just going to do this. And he invested in that company. And then eventually that company became Rackspace. And it sold for several $billion. I think it's like over $2 billion, $3 billion.
Wow. Okay. With that said, so how did you manage pressure from investors and clients?
You got to do your work. I mean, that's the biggest thing is if you're, this is some things that some people do right, some people don't do so well, is sometimes you get investment and it's a big relief. Like, oh, we can take a breather, take it easy, show up to work a little bit late. That's a mistake. But a lot of people who receive funding, they feel that sort of pressure off of them all of a sudden, and they switch their behavior. And sincerely, that's a mistake. If you're receiving investment,
Uh-huh.
you need to be a good steward over that money. That money is borrowed against your future. And there's a metric for this too. There's metrics. Like you can think like every dollar I spend of that investment money today is worth $1,800 tomorrow down the road. And so do you really need to go buy that $3 or $4 cup of coffee every morning? Does that really make that much of a difference? I mean, how are you spending that money? You need to be attentive to that, because sometimes they're wasteful and they're spending and they blow through the cash and they haven't achieved the progression that that cash was meant to give them. So how I handle investors is I take that very seriously, and I'm making sure that we are overachieving. That we need to take that money and make progression.
Okay. So what's your secret to build a resilient business across industries? What is your secret? Because
Staffing, the people, staffing and vendors. You need to really think. You really need to hire good people and
uh
be a good leader. The one important part of that is it happens so often where you have a company, you're doing XYZ, you're doing things, people have their jobs, but one mistake is to not effectively communicate throughout the organization what we're doing here, what we're trying to achieve. You need to have clarity in leadership, clarity in goals. What is right? Often,
uh
a new leader doesn't understand what right is. And so they're hiring somebody to put them in a position, and it can be arbitrary because the person who hired them doesn't even know what success looks like. So you all need to be on the same page in terms of what success looks like. What are we trying to achieve? And then the key to that long-term success is going to be quality of people, and also your vendors, quality of vendors, and the relationship you maintain with your vendors, because your vendors will lift you up or pull you down. So you need to, same with your staff. You need to have both of those things working together. And here's the trick that most people fail on is they don't fire people sometimes. If someone isn't, if you have effectively communicated what we're all supposed to be doing here, NASA is a good example. Like when NASA was trying to go to the moon, everyone knew, hey, our mission is go to the moon. You can ask the garbage guy, the guy doing maintenance, like what's your job? My job was to put a man in the moon. You need that type of clarity in your organization. If you have achieved that, and someone isn't really delivering and isn't living up to the goals, you need to be able to talk to them, set those expectations, and if they fail, you need to be able to let them go. Their future isn't with that organization; they must be with another organization. But one big mistake that I've done myself is I've held on to people too long, trying to push the noodle up the hill again, trying to help them, trying to get them to do something that they're not.
Wow. Yeah. It, yeah. I had a hard time letting people go myself. I'm more of a uh taking them under my wing and hey, okay, let's try a different route. Now,
Yeah,
if we
just
tried
as
all the different routes and I can look myself in the mirror and we tried these routes and they're still not getting it, and then it's time, okay, time to let them go and move them on to somewhere else where they can be better,
yep,
you know,
yep.
because they weren't better for the mission, like you're saying, for the company. So, with that said, I know you have many businesses, and walk us through if someone like myself wanted to own like a tap room. What would my process? Where would I start? Like business plan. Uh, y- with me not knowing a lot of people, walk me through my process to where I want to be successful.
Well, I mean, with a tap room or any type of business,
Any type of business.
yeah,
You can talk
yeah.
about your.
A business plan. I mean, the traditional thing that you might think of a business plan, I'm not a big advocate for, but you need to have a clear plan. You need to have a really clear plan in what you're trying to achieve.
Mhm.
And is someone else doing this? Right? Am I trying to do something that someone else is already doing? Like if you're, having a tap room, do you want to put it next to another one? Why? And how are you going to get those customers to come into your place? So that's the first thing, is to analyze really carefully the thing that you want to do. Make sure that it's going to have some uniqueness to you. It's going to, the customers are going to be there. You can't really do, I'll build it and then they'll come. You need to have a good understanding of what you're trying to achieve. And again, what success looks like. So
Okay.
in terms of the new age business plan, it's like what success looks like, really clarity in terms of what precisely does success look like. And then you can back into how do you get there and how much is that going to cost. So another big failure point is, often someone, a young entrepreneur, might have some money in their pocket. It might be burning a hole in their pocket. Typically, $50,000, $60,000, maybe $100,000. But is that going to be enough? Because almost always it's not. And especially if it's your first time, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. So you're going to waste money. So you got to try to minimize the mistakes that you're making and maximize the funding and make sure you have enough. Because all too often someone will get started and they don't have enough to finish. And it happens at least half the time. So make sure you have enough money to achieve what you're trying to achieve. Understand what you're trying to achieve in terms of knowing what success looks like. And then lastly, having a financial plan, like a model, in Excel or Google Sheets or something, where, once you get to having your thing, once you've got your location or your software or your company, once you're set up and going, how do you make money? And how much money do you make? And is that enough to grow and sustain you and your business? Because another common mistake that happens is they'll start modeling that out, but they never pay themselves. So you'll get like, you have a husband and wife, and I've seen this a few times, where they'll get started in a business, and like a food service business or something, and they're making it, right? The money's coming in, but they're not paying themselves. I mean, they could go get a job, at McDonald's and take home more money than they are at their own company. And so how long does that make sense? And will it ever change? If you model it out and there's never going to be enough money to pay you, then, that's a non-starter. So those three things I think are the most important.
Most important.
Yeah. Understanding what you're trying to achieve, make sure you have enough money to achieve it, and then modeling it out long term. Short, medium, and long term.
Okay. Do you approach entrepreneurship as art or science or both?
There's two factors. I think both is the answer. Both, because it's like, I mean, it's really entrepreneurship in terms of building businesses. You need to have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, or you need to know where to go get it, or to bring people to the table that can help. So that's some experience. And then the entrepreneur's journey, right? The leader of a founder, leading companies, that's kind of unique. That needs to be in you. Like you can't, sometimes I've seen people who say they want to do something, just verbally, like over a beer or something. They'll say that, oh, I want to do a company. I want to learn how to program. If someone would just teach me how to set up this, switch or router, it's like, so if you want to do something, you're going to be doing it. If you to tell me that you're just waiting for someone to walk through the door to teach you how to program a computer,
That's not going to happen.
that's not good. That's not the winning. So, you need to actually go teach yourself how to program a computer. You probably, if you really, that was in your heart, you would have already done it.
Yeah. So with all the businesses that you've had and you help with your consultant, I know you're really up there. You're CEO, you're owner, CEO. Um, how has your definition of success changed over the years?
Well, that's depends on the business and what you're doing. The before, I think I was pretty juvenile about it, where I was, had a sort of a high bar in terms of having things done right and complete, sort of an excellence approach, and competing in the market against companies that took a different approach, where good enough is. And sadly, often good enough is works. I mean, if something's good enough, then they're going to win.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Uh-huh.
if you have something that's good enough and they're out there first and it's good enough and they're cheaper and it's good enough, and you're stuck at home trying to get to perfection, the good enough guy is gaining ground in the market on you. They're going to win. So good enough. I had to accept that good enough is, and then once you achieve good enough, then you work towards perfection. And in the software development world, that's called agile development, where you get something out the door as fast as you can, and then you improve, and you just cycle. You have quick cycles. And that's a different way of thinking about the world, which it works.
Wow. So what legacy do you hope Robles Andrews and with your coffee business, what legacy would you like to share with us and leave behind? I know you're passionate about the coffee and the freshness, and I understand the 1918. That's because your grandfather was going to work, and you were brought up by him, you and your sister. But what legacy would you like to leave behind?
Um, that's a tough question. I want to leave. I'm pretty far from that, but I want to leave. The legacy I would like to leave is
Yeah.
one of innovation and quality. I want to build quality based businesses and continue to innovate. I've got a lot of other ideas that I want to bring to the market, and people to help continue to improve and change people's lives.
Okay, so you got me here. What would you like to bring to the market? Because you're one of them smart guys. What do you want to bring to the market? What
Oh,
what
I've
is
got I've got a lot of ideas. I mean, like there's one
just throw it
software.
out there. Yeah,
Well, there's
throw
a
it out
software
there.
company I'm working on right now for security, and so I'm getting customers for that, but that's not public yet. And then there's
Yeah.
another solution that I'm working on, um, and I'll run the idea by you. I want to secure people's personal digital information. So I want to make there a way for everybody's personal digital information and your footprint you leave across the internet and the digital world to be secure, and for you to access that and for you to be able to control that. And I have some methods that I've come up with to do that. And so I want to build that product and I want to bring that product to the market. I think it would make a big difference in the world.
Oh, it make a big difference. So because people get tired of other people getting their information stolen or getting all the scam calls. So I think that falls in that elm of that, right?
It does, and there's so much fraud that can be avoided, and fraudulent transactions in many ways. Like if I allowed you to control your personal digital information, then marketing companies who are buying marketing information from third parties, why? Because it's 80% of it's inaccurate. So some third party has information on each one of us, and a majority of the information they have is not accurate. It's either stale or it's completely false. So then, wouldn't it be better for them to get the data directly from you and let you control it? And today, these companies have made trillions of dollars literally off of our personal information, and we're not even part of the conversation. They don't talk to you or me. We get to click OK on a box somewhere. That's the limit of our involvement is click OK. It's baloney. Where these companies are buying all of our bank transactions, like our banks are selling all of our data to companies, and they can see all of our financial transactions, but we're not even part of the conversation. So I want to make it where we are part of we are the person that they're talking to. They have to work with us as for our data, and then we should be getting rewarded for our data as well.
I think it's gonna work.
Thanks. Thanks.
I pretty much I'll invest in you. I don't have much, but I sure will invest in you.
Thanks. Well, that's an idea I want to bring to the market.
Yeah, it's an idea, but you got to bring it forth. I'm pretty sure you're a smart man, so you're going to probably already have that cycling ready to go, and you just need a little more torque into it
Well,
to make them
I've
work.
put a year into development so far.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking. So, what advice would you give to someone afraid to start over after a failure?
Oh, you got to get back on the horse or the bicycle. I mean, you got to get back up there. Um, Here's one also that's a really good thing that could really help is and this also is valid for someone who wants to create a company and they discover there's somebody already doing that.
Uh-huh.
Swallow some pride and join in. You know, you don't have to be the person standing in front every time. Join in and learn some. And so if you have had a failure, take a breath and then go join someone else's thing that interests you, that goes in the direction that you want to go. You're only going to get learnings. You're going to get some stability. You're going to get some strength again. And maybe you can end up in a leadership role, one of those companies, or this gives you a platform to jump off to try again.
Yeah, they probably need somebody to believe in them. So, kind of
Yep.
like who believed in you in your early career? You said you went to UC Santa Cruz. So, who believed in you for you to start your process?
Well, I mean, I had that professor who brought me into his company and helped make it. That was a that was he believed in me, but he was also taking advantage of me.
Of your knowledge, huh?
Yeah,
So that's
but most of the things that happened to me in going through Silicon Valley was people didn't necessarily believe in me. I was, usually I got into a company at a lower level, and then I excelled. I succeeded inside the organizations, and people are like, "Wow."
so when you were in Silicon Valley and you were working for the during that internet boom, and you started at that level, did you eventually be helping the CEOs? Breaking bread with them, having coffee or
Very,
beer.
very quickly. Like I got into, I was at one of my first startup companies, and that was called Coactive, and we were doing a networking device, and I
Uh-huh.
was just a QA guy. And I got in there, and I was making a difference. I was making a really, and I was organizing their QA and their testing harnesses, and I was writing some automation software, and very quickly, even though I was really young, they raised me up in the company and made me a manager, first co-manager, because there was an older guy that was also
Uh-huh.
doing QA, but I was excelling past him in many ways. And then I started working directly, I broke bread with the CEO and the VP of engineering. And, I'm still in contact with the VP of engineering from that company.
So hopefully you were getting paid quite a good
I
decent
wasn't.
pay.
I didn't. I mean, I didn't get paid so well. They got a deal. And then I left that company and I went to Apple. And that's when I got a pretty large bump in pay. And then I had my own office at Apple. And that was a great experience. It was like one of the nicest jobs I've had. But
So
then
what did you do at Apple?
I was working on the Newton. Did you remember the or, Steve Jobs denied it, but it was the early version of an iPhone.
Really?
Yeah. Do you remember the Apple Newton? It was a handheld device, pretty large, and they were chasing handwritten writing recognition, which was a mistake. But it was a device that allowed you to do all the things you could do on an iPhone.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. I didn't even know you was working on a device like that.
Yep. I was in charge.
So
I did the automated test harness, and then I also was working on the software for doing send and receive faxes.
Mhm.
But then I ended up in Netcom. After that, I got recruited into Netcom.
Okay, okay. So wow, you're so much full of knowledge. So when you left Apple, where did you go from there?
Netcom. Netcom.
But
I
you
got
built Netcom, right?
no,
Or
no,
did
no,
you
no.
go to
I
Netcom?
was I was employee number 42 at Netcom. But I was there at a really important time because they really needed, some leadership, and so I was leading two different groups out of the engineering department to help get that product going, and then we ended up solving a lot of problems, hiring lots of people. You know, during my time at Netcom, we grew from basically having around 10,000 customers to over 250,000 customers. And we went public too. I was there for the IPO. I was working with the media. I helped prepare the red herring for the IPO.
Wow. So, so like Florida, the knowledge, and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
very thankful.
Netcom was crazy
I
because I was working 18-hour days, at least 6 days a week. It was really it was intense time.
Yeah, it was an intense time, but you put the time in, and then look where you're at now.
Yeah,
You're a highly recommended consultant place, right? People want your knowledge, and people want to learn from you. So you got to pat yourself on the back for that.
thanks.
Yeah, you really do. So my next question would be about what part did you have in the SaaS product?
A SaaS product?
Yeah.
I have lots of SaaS products. What do you mean?
The scaling of it. I mean, let's see. I'm trying to
I
say
have
it in.
I have a SaaS solution right now called GotLaw. So GOT.law.
Okay.
So it helps people get legal services because so many people should be getting a lawyer, should be getting legal help, and they're not getting it. So sort of an access to justice solution is what it is, and it's a SaaS solution, software as a service, and the scaling is really important. And I got good at scaling when I was at Netcom, but it's been something I've been doing for a long time. But scaling that is really important. And it's the systems, how you build the systems, how you plan ahead, how you have the systems set up so they can automatically scale.
Huh.
I got a lot
Okay.
of scaling expertise. I had the company Nanospace I mentioned to you, and during that time, I invested in a company called Keyhole, and I was also a customer using that software to plan out my fiber optic networks and my microwave networks. And I designed that server system to help it scale, and it was like we scaled that quite a bit. So I got pretty good at scaling. Um, they were later acquired by Google, and so all those servers are sitting in my data center, and I was managing that system.
So do you operate more from instant or from data?
You got to listen to both. Sometimes data will lie to you, sometimes data can be manipulated, and you need to scratch below the surface so you know what you're looking at, what it really means. Because sometimes information can be misleading. And you need to listen to your gut. You really do. Some of the worst mistakes I've made is when I didn't do that.
Wow. Okay. If you had to start over today in a brand in a new industry, what would it be?
Um, I'm already doing things in AI, but it would definitely be AI. Um, Probably MCP, writing APIs for AIs. I think that's definitely a place to be right now.
But say that again. I'm trying to understand what you're
Writing
saying.
writing APIs for AIs, so creating
Okay.
software to allow AIs to talk to other software.
Oh, I already thought they did.
No, no, they don't. They can do queries for you, but
Okay.
like you know, there could be like maybe I should make a API for AIs to talk to my legal system. So when someone's looking for a lawyer, they can use AIs to leverage my system to do that. Because I have almost all the American lawyers in my system already, and got law. And so that would be a really good resource for people to find legal help and get legal information.
Okay. Okay. So, what's a dream project, right? I know we talked about a couple or partnership you haven't pursued yet, but you still think about.
Um, well, I've done some government work, for the Air Force, um, and I've been asked to do more of that. So I'm probably going to do more of that.
How do you manage doing all these different? I mean, you got a lot going on. How do you manage that?
For me, it's natural. I mean, I have a lot of interest, a lot of capabilities. I mean, having all of the skills sometimes is a curse because you can do everything yourself, and so you got to, being able to hand things to other people is important. But the way I visualize it and I handle it is I refer to it as plate spinning. Are you familiar with plate spinning?
No.
It's an old like stage act from vaudeville or something where person on stage would have a pole, a rod coming out of the stage, and they would put a plate on it and they'd spin that around. So they'd have this rod spinning with a plate, and they would do another one, and they would do another one. And they would have the whole stage covered with these rods of plate spinning. And so their skill was to keep all the plates spinning without letting anything fall. And that's what I do. Each one of these things, I mean, I focus on that plate, whatever the item is, whatever the company is, whatever the business is, and I just do that. Everything else I'm ignoring. I'm just making sure that that one's good, and then I can move on to do the next one. So for me, when I'm talking about a company or I'm focused on an idea, I'm all in on that one, and that's where my attention is at, and that's what I'm doing.
Okay. And as we wind down, what do you want to be remembered for? Your innovations, your mentorship, or something else?
I don't know. I've never really thought about things in those terms. I mean, I've mentored a few people, and that's been helpful. That's changed their lives. I mean, I've got a lot of positive feedback from that. But also, I've invented some things that the world just doesn't, like the Metro Ethernet. No one knows I made that. And it's kind of funny that I tried getting a patent for it, and I was denied. The CEO the BC's had me hire. He said, well, the people who need to know. It's like, but I think he was benefiting from people not knowing. So that's a
Well, now
difficult
they
one.
know.
Well,
They know from the Kelly Cat Tap Talk show.
well, the other thing is back in the late, it was 89, I think it was 87. Um, sorry, 97. NASA said you could not do TCP/IP to space. Said not possible. And I was like, I didn't buy that. I could conceptualize how to do that. So I figured out how to do that, made a device with one of my team members. We made devices to allow us to do that, to demonstrate it, and I got a patent. I got 2 patents for that, for telecommunications to space. And the thing I'm proud about is that's used everywhere now. There's hundreds of patents built upon my idea on how to do that. So like
Wow.
even Starlink today uses, their patents are all subject to my patent. They're built upon what I did. So it's interesting, and our government uses it for communicating with our Navy and our ships and our Air Force. It's a lot of fun. So I'm proud of that, and I want to do more of those. I got more of those in me.
I'm going to ask an off the wall question.
Sure.
And that is, well, when you was a little kid, what was you doing? I was riding bikes. I had an evil Knievel. You know what I'm saying?
I
I was
I I
going
had I had a,
fishing.
I had
What
a
were
evil
you
Knievel.
doing?
I had a evil
Uh,
Knievel. Well, I started
yeah.
programming. I taught myself how to program when I was 10, and I wrote my first program when I was 11.
Wow. I had to ask that question because
Yeah.
I'm not, you know.
Well, I was inspired. That was back when um, Apple was first coming out, and IBM's new XT just came out, and I saw the commercial um, playing Beethoven's Release, with Charlie Chaplin from the IBM commercial, and I just knew I had to have that. I wanted one of those, and I pressured my mother to do something, and I gave up 2 birthdays and a Christmas in exchange for a TRS-80, which was one of the first commercial hobbyist computers. And I started, and it came with, a couple of books on GW Basic. I taught myself how to program. And then she was a dispatcher at Greyhound in San Francisco. So she told all the drivers, like, if you find anything, tech, science, software, and this was really early in that age, to send it her way because they had a lot of lost and found. And I ended up with some of the first AI books, some of the first software books and magazines. As a child, I went to the first California Computer Club meetings. So I was involved at a really early age.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Oh, it was crazy. And I was like, I mean, I'm a little kid, right? Like, I'm 11 years old. I'm getting on the bus on East 14th, which wasn't necessarily safe. And I went down to near the convention center in Oakland to go to like some of the first meetings.
You did this by yourself? You just,
Yeah.
Were you when you went to these meetings, were you the youngest there? Were people looking at you like, who's this little guy?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, they think that I was a kid with somebody else. Yeah.
All right.
Someone's kid.
Oh, absolutely. All right. This is Cali Cat Tap Talks, and we are going to end the show, but we're going to have him come back for a part two. I'm so curious on the different, in my terms, I'm going to say things he's got going on, but in his terms, it's different businesses he's got going on, his success stories. I would love to have you back and go over some more success stories if you're okay with that.
Anytime.